Hi everyone, welcome to Tech Education channel. In this video, we'll talk about the terminology related to high availability and scalability. Next, we'll talk about app service. What is app service? So what are the benefits it has, what are the advantages, etc. We'll talk about it. And finally, we'll go through the demo. In the demo, we'll create and deploy a web application to app service, and then we will enable authentication for the app service which we deployed it. Okay, stay tuned. Now, first thing is high availability. So high availability in the sense, basically the whenever the user is trying to access your application should be up and running. So sometimes what happens is because of the hardware failure or because of some other reasons, there will be a downtime in the applications. So by default, Azure provides us high available systems. That is like 99.95% percentage availability will be there. However, this is applicable only in standard and premium tiers. And if you talk about the downtime, approximately it's around 22 minutes per month. There can be a downtime from the app service. This itself is a great feature because by default you get this without any extra effort. Now, second thing is scalability. So scalability is of two types: horizontal scaling and vertical scaling. Vertical scaling means you are increasing the infrastructure of your server. Basically, infrastructure in the sense it could be your RAM, it could be your storage capacity, etc. For example, you might have deployed your app service where it has like 8 CPU and 64 GB RAM, and then you wanted to scale up. I mean, that's another name for vertical scaling. So you can just scale it up to 16 CPU and 128, depending on the application needs what you have it. Now, horizontal scaling or scale out, you can also call it a scale out. Basically, here you're creating multiple instances of your application, which gives it's like suppose if you have like large user request, so multiple applications can serve it via the load balancer. So in this way, there will be a better performance, high availability, and scalability also will be there. These two terms are really important for us to understand related to app service because these two features are important features which are available in the app service. Now, app service. So, in a very simple terms, app service is a hosting environment where you can deploy your applications without worrying about the infrastructure. Like as we discussed earlier, you don't have to worry about how to create high scalable systems, high available systems. We don't have to worry because entire thing is available in the app service itself because it's a platform as a service offering from Microsoft. Okay. Now, in for any app service, if you want to create it, you need an app service plan. As of now, just understand that app service plan is a collection of app services, and you can configure the kind of infrastructure what is required for your applications to run. Example like GBs, what is the RAM capacity, what is the storage, etc. will be available or configured in the app service plan. And I'll be creating a separate video for app service plan. Okay, so now initially you'll have an app service plan, and app service plan will have multiple app services. So you can have more than one app service in the app service plan. And another important thing here is in app service, you have something called deployment slots. Deployment slots are nothing but it's an environment. For example, so you have an application which you deployed in production. You just don't go and deploy it into production directly, right? So for the development purpose, you will have a separate instance where developers will be doing unit testing. For QA, where testers will do the QA testing, you will have a separate environment. For customer testing, you will have a user acceptance testing environment, and then finally you'll have a production environment. So now in one app service, you can have a different deployment slots. Okay, so it is you can just consider that of course whatever environments I told, it is not specific, it is not compulsory for every company. Each company will have a different environments. Whatever I spoke about different environments is like in general what companies will follow. Okay, we will see what is this deployment slot in the demo. Now, next, so we discussed about what is an app service. and what kind of applications we can deploy it in an app service. We can deploy web applications, web jobs also we can deploy, APIs, and then even functions also we can deploy in the app service. So that is why if you see here under app service plan, you can deploy any of these apps. Now, so what are the different types of languages it supports it? So it supports .NET, .NET Core, PHP, Python, Node.js, Java, and containerization like Docker as well. One major advantage is scalability and high availability. So you can scale up your app service infrastructure configuration, or you can scale out where you can create multiple instances of your app services. Now, next is like authentication. Okay, so this is another beautiful feature. So you can have identity provider authentication for your app service. That identity providers could be like Microsoft, Google, Twitter, Facebook, etc. This particular authentication also we will see it in the demo. How do we do about it? Now, next is like security. So nowadays it is called as Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Basically, this is a security layer for your app services. So what happens is like suppose if you get any malicious attack on your applications, so this will be blocked by the Microsoft Defender for Cloud. When I say block, example could be your brute force attack. Suppose if someone is trying to access your application with by trying out multiple passwords, and if this Microsoft Defender for Cloud will identify that, and then it will block it. And on top of it, it will give you the recommendations for the better security purpose. Again, this also we will talk about in the demo. Deployment slots, we spoke about it. Basically, different environments. You can have multiple versions of your applications in the deployment slots, and these deployment slots are available within the app service. Next is like custom domain. See, for example, if you have deployed any app service, by default, it will have a domain called Azure Websites.net. For example, if I say like I have created tech education dot app service, tech education app service, then by default, the domain name will be tech education dot Azure Websites.net. And if I wanted to change it to if I have a domain name called like tech education, so I'll be able to configure that domain to the app service. And next is cost efficiency. Suppose if you want to deploy this particular application in your VMs, it's expensive when comparing with the app services. Second thing is resource utilization will be far better because see, app service is a collection of your apps, right? So whatever the hardware configuration you do it for your app service plan, it will be shared across all the apps in the app service. And next is like it supports multiple platforms, so you can deploy the applications in Windows and Linux, and it supports multiple languages which we discussed like .NET, .NET Core, Python, etc. And we can deploy different types of apps like web apps, web jobs, function apps, APIs, etc. So now let's jump into the demo. First, we need to log into the Azure portal. So you can see the app service here. And in case if you're not able to see the app service here, so you can go to the search box and then type app services. Okay, so we don't have any app services currently, so that is why it is plain. And now let's create a web application. My subscription is pay as you go. So you can just select your subscription, whatever you have it. And then I would like to say I have multiple resource groups. So I select my resource group as YouTube. So now let's enter the name of the app service as Tech Education. And then I would like to select .NET 8. And so this will be a Windows platform. So it's okay. I'd like to leave that East US as it is. Okay. And now I already have a plan. Okay. So that's why it's selected by default for East US. And suppose in case if you don't have your app service plan, you can just create it over here. As I said earlier, we will have a separate video to discuss about app service plan. And next is like zone redundancy. This zone redundancy is like, say, suppose if you have one instance of your application, okay, if there is any hardware failure, so your application will be down and users will not have any pleasant experience, and it could be a potential loss for the business as well. So zero redundancy in the sense it will give up extra protection from the hardware failures, infrastructure failures. So by default, 99.95% availability will anyway it's there. In case if you have a huge traffic and a high impact business applications where you don't want to foresee any hardware failures. So in that case, you will enable the zone redundancy. What happens is in the zone redundancies, it will create three instances. And in case of failure of any of the instance, it will redirect to the other instance. So you will get little extra high availability if you enable zone redundant. So as we don't have any database for our demo purpose, so I'm just going to leave it as it is. And now continuous deployment disable. I don't need that right now. Application settings, I'll enable basic authentication and public access on. I would like to leave these two as it is. Applications it's inside, it's not required. So this is what I was talking about Microsoft Defender for Cloud, which is like a security extra protection for your app services. And also tags, I don't want to give any tags. So now the resource group, what we selected is YouTube. Name of the web app is like Tech Education App Service, I mean to say. And so we have selected plan client one, and then it's a Windows and it's an extra small VM which it will be used for deployment. And I have selected 4 GB over there. Okay. And app insights we disabled it. So now let's go ahead and create it. Meanwhile, let's move on to the Visual Studio. Let's create our application. So I would like to create ASP.NET Core web application, and let's give the name as same Tech Education. So next, okay, .NET 8. Okay, so this is the default code generated by the Visual Studio. For demo purpose, I would like to keep it as it is. So let's build and see the output of this particular application. So this is the Visual Studio output. If you see here, it's a local host. Now let's go to the app service. And so this is the app service, and this is the default template for every app service. Whatever you create it, you will get it. Now we will replace this output with our output welcome application. Okay. So for that, we need to publish the application. So select the application and then click on publish. So ours is Azure. So now it's a Windows-based Azure App Service. So this is a resource group which we selected over there, and in that resource group we have our application Tech Education. So let's finish. Now it's ready to publish. So click on publish. This is the so application is deployed into techeducation.azurewebsites.net. If you remember, this is the old output, and now this is the new output. So now let's try to refresh this page. So it's the same output. That means our web application is deployed successfully to app service. Okay, now let's see this. So now here, if you notice it, we don't need any authentication over here. We'll be able to access it directly. So now let's implement authentication for this. So for that, you need to enable authentication over here. So go to the authentication blade. Add the identity provider. So you have different identity providers, Google, Twitter, GitHub, Facebook. So I'm going to select Microsoft, and then I leave all the default things as it is. So important point here is it says like require authentication, and in case if you don't have enough access, you will get 302 error. Now next permissions. So by default, you're giving this access, like you're giving access of reading your user profile information to this particular application. That's what it means by it when I say user.read permissions. So I'm okay with that. So I'm just adding that. Okay, so it's added that. So if you see here, identity provider is Microsoft. This is the client ID, etc. Now, so let's do one thing. Okay, let's log out. Then let's access the application. So we need to log in. So now we are logging into it. So this is the authentication we have enabled. Since we have enabled authentication, it's asking the username and password. Now another thing here is, so you're supposed to give permissions. This app would like to view your basic profile. This is what we saw in the user.read permissions. So now I'm going to say yes. You can. This application can access my profile information. This will give the protection to the app service in case if someone is trying to hack the application or trying to get unauthorized access. So this Microsoft Defender for Cloud will stop that particular threat, and it will log that details as well. For example, in the security alerts, if some threat is occurred, so it will stop that threat, and then it will show it in the security alerts. Right now, since it's a new application, you are not seeing any alerts and recommendations. Recommendations are nothing but like it gives you recommendation for better security of your application. And if some brute force attack happens and other stuff, you will be able to see it here. Okay, since we don't have any alerts, we are not able to see. But if you have anything, we'll be able to see it over here. Now, next is the deployment slots. So under deployment section, you can see it here. So let's try to add some different slot. Could be dev environment or QA. So let's make it as a QA environment. I would like to clone the settings from the tech education. Okay, it's saying that it should be lowercase characters. So let's add this. Okay, so if you see here, earlier we are not able to see anything. So whatever is app service which we have created tech education, that by default it goes as production environment. And since we have created a QA environment, it is showing it as tech education hyphen QA. So this is the deployment slots. And we can have the backups over here. So automatic backup it takes for every 1 hour. Now next is like custom domains. In case if you have any custom domain for your app service or for your application, you will be able to configure over here. And next, another important feature is like scalability. So there are two types: scale up and scale out. So scale up is like, so now it will show you what is the configuration of your app service plan. So for example, right now we are at premium V3, which will have one CPU, 4 GB. And if you want to increase it to 16 or 32 GB, you can just scale up over here. Basically, you're increasing the hardware infrastructure of your app service. Now, scale out is like you can create multiple instances. There is something called auto scaling. Based on some set of rules, it will create the instances, or it could be manual as well. You can create a manual scaling. So if you see here in manual, you can just mention how many instance counts you wanted so that that number of application instances will be created. It could be automatic also.